What is a money machine?
Here's what it is meant to do, to create a cash flow stream. And that cash flow stream isn't your wealth, but it is the fuel for your wealth. It is the building blocks of a money machine. And a money machine is built by acquiring income generating assets that don't require your.
Welcome back to another episode, and this one is very special because it's for you. We have been blessed with the opportunity to generate a lot of income with our online businesses. But what are you doing with the income? So, my question is, I'm curious, do you feel like you're on the path to your dreams with this online business vehicle? A recent survey by Achieve says a little more than 1 out of 10, 11% of people are living their definition of financial freedom. So if you feel like you aren't where you want to be, you're not alone. And it doesn't need to be that way. Most of us never had the map to do money right. I certainly didn't. And I can't go out and like blame my parents, but they didn't teach me about personal financial education, about money. And so now the guest on this episode is going to give you the opportunity to change the way you think about money. It's simpler than you think. And no matter where you are in your financial journey, now is the time to get things in order. I want to introduce to you Mel Abraham. He's the author of Your Money Machine book. Mel?
Oh my God, so good to be here. Yep. Building your money machine. Here we go.
So, Mel, you and I met already back about 3 years ago when I was the first part of a paid accelerator mastermind, the one that Rick Mulready ran. And the reason this topic comes so close to home is I remember being a new online business owner, making decent money, but I hadn't yet cracked I don't think I'd cracked like $6,000 a month at that point, you know? And I was sitting in a room with people who, were pushing $1 million in revenue. Maybe the lowest was at like 300, $400,000 in annual revenue. And I remember sitting there and hearing some of the same financial conversations that like I was used to hearing at somebody who had just a regular, day job. I mean, we're talking about how do I make the finances, like how do I make the bills at the end of the month, or how do I put together. It just dawned on me that it didn't matter if you make a ton of money, or what some people would call like an upper 5% income, in the US. You still had to run your finances right in order to not live quote unquote paycheck to paycheck, or for us, month to month. And so, Mel, like I would love for you to speak to what you're seeing with online entrepreneurs right now.
Oh my God, this is such a good question and a good one to start with. Here's the thing. First things first, I'll let you all off the hook. It ain't your fault. I mean, and the amount of money you make isn't the thing that drives your freedom or your wealth. Let's just look at what's out there. Let's look at, Mike Tyson, Burt Reynolds, Nicolas Cage. I can rattle more and more off that made hundreds of millions of dollars, lots of money, well beyond most of us are ever going to even see. And they ended up broke. So, yet there's a study, 10,000 millionaires, that showed that 79% of them became first generation millionaires, meaning that it wasn't gifted, wasn't inherited, wasn't won. It was created in their lifetime. 8 out of 10, that's good. That is good statistics on our side. And now you look at it and say 31% of them never made much more than $100,000 a year. So given those two things, you sit back and you look at it and go, then it really isn't the income that's driving our wealth and the freedom. It's something different. It's something else. But the problem is that, and I hate to start the whole show with statistics, but I think it sets the page a little bit. 72%, the American Psychological Association just said 72% of people are stressed about money. So it doesn't take a lot of money to build wealth. We see that. 72% are stressed about money, we've seen a lot of online entrepreneurs that make a lot of money, but they don't have anything really to show for it. What's happening? What's happening is that actually we're not talking about it. So us having this conversation is huge. Is that most of our money lessons over the years are caught, not taught. We take it in from observation. We watch our parents. We see the media. We see social media. You got people on TikTok saying, "No, buy a $200,000 R8. That's a good investment." Anyone questioning it? It's not. So the reality is that we are not being deliberate about our financial education. Not that it has to be complex, and we've been taught to, hey, I came up in a household where talking about money was impolite. You're not supposed to. So we never talked. Well, but if everyone's stressed about it and people aren't getting it right, but we're not supposed to talk about it, how do we solve the problem? The reason I wrote Building Your Money Machine partly is, well, I want to have a conversation. It becomes the opening volley for the conversation so we can change it. And so I think that at the very beginning, the first thing is to sit back and say, it's okay to not know what is the next step because you weren't meant to know, weren't taught to know, but it's not okay now that you know that to ignore it.
So, Mel, let's start here. What is a money machine? And the second question is what would you tell someone is the first step to get control of their financial future? But you can answer those in any order you want because I also would love for the listener to hear your story. You're not just talking about building this money machine. This is something that you went through personally when you got unexpected news several years ago. So, like, please share it with the listener. They need to hear this.
So here, let's just talk about how it got born in my life, and believe it or not, this whole concept was born out of from at the hands of a 6-year-old. Bottom line is that I was a single full-time dad. I was an entrepreneur. I was building my business. I was doing the things. I was on the treadmill. I was running. I was making money. I'm an accountant by trade, CPA by trade. And the money was coming in, things were going well. And then Jeremy, my son at 6 years old, comes running in and saying, Daddy, I drew a picture of you at school today. And so I kneel down and I grab this picture, and there it is, me standing there in front of 2 computer screens and a phone in each ear. And I'm one on the desk ringing. Yeah. Oh, it hits home. It was a mirror into my soul. And this boy was looking at me saying, indirectly, Dad, you're screwing up. I get that you want the profits, but I need the presence. And he wasn't getting it. And for me, that hit hard because he was the greatest gift in my life at that point. And I was failing it. I was failing him. And that's when it challenged my beliefs around business and about money, saying, can they coexist? How do I do money differently? How do I do business differently? So it allows me to cherish and nurture the gift of fatherhood or whatever it is in our lives. And it's easy to come up with excuses. Now, that is what gave birth to the whole idea of a money machine. And what I realized in general terms, what is a money machine? It is a way to separate your ability to earn from the efforts to earn it. That's really what we're trying to do. Because as long as you have to be on the treadmill, you have no freedom. There is no freedom. I was on the treadmill, and the only way I was going to make more money was to run faster, run longer, run harder. And the only thing that guaranteed was breakdown or burnout or disappointing the people you love.
We're getting older. We can't run faster.
I know. Trust me. And so I had to sit back and say, wait a second. We are earning money. We're told to earn money. We are in business. We're online entrepreneurs. We're earning money. Yes, we need that. But the earnings itself isn't the wealth and the freedom. Why do we do online entrepreneurship? It's to provide a solution. It's to have an impact. It's to get a message out there. It's to solve problems. Nothing in there said to build wealth. Nothing in there said freedom. Nothing in there said said control. But we interpret it, well, all I'm gonna do is online. It's online, so I'm gonna be on some beach somewhere with my laptop and collecting money, and nothing's further than the truth. Here's what it is meant to do, to create a cash flow stream. And that cash flow stream isn't your wealth, but it is the fuel for your wealth. It is the building blocks of a money machine. And a money machine is built by acquiring income generating assets that don't require your time. Okay. And so this is what I was set out to do, is say, okay, I got to run on the treadmill, but how do I use that run on the treadmill to generate cash to build this money machine, so I am on an earnings journey and a money journey at the same time? And now it gives me that freedom. Now, the importance of this, like you alluded to, hit home in 2019, because I was doing really well, successful, living on the beach, traveling and speaking and everything. And I ended up in a hospital bed with a surgeon looking at me saying, "You have cancer." Now, I'm not a drinker, not a smoker. You know, I lived a clean life. No one in my family ever had cancer. They found a tumor in my bladder that they thought was 5 centimeters, ended up being 7.5 centimeters. They said, "You might lose the prostate because it's on top of that. We might have to put a bag and a tube in for the kidney. And if it's bad, you're going to lose your bladder, and potentially you lose your life." So life got flipped upside down. Now, in that moment, I knew I have to fight the cancer. I have to fight it psychologically, physically, medically, energetically, spiritually. I had to fight it in all ways. But I also knew that I didn't have to fight it financially.
If you wish that I could just hop into your Facebook ad manager and run your ads for you, or at least download all my 3+ years of experience into your ads so that they would run the right way, you pretty much got your wish. There's a new offer that I made, and my clients so far are loving it. It's called Facebook Ads to Success, and that means for you, I can coach you one-on-one so that you can successfully run your lead generation ad campaigns, your launch registration ad campaigns, even your sales funnel, SLO, self-liquidating offer funnel ad campaign. Here's how it will work. We will have 3 calls within 30 days. During that first call, I'm going to show you the exact ways to get your account running optimally. We'll do also like analytics setup if you don't have those set up right, so that your ads can function the right way. We'll also look at your funnel, and I'll point out to you the areas in your funnel that could be converting better. And I'll make recommendations about how to improve those areas of your funnel. And then if you have running ads currently, we'll look at those ads. Otherwise, we'll go through all the things you need to consider before setting up your ads. In between the calls, you get unlimited access to me. That means on Slack or Voxer or even Messenger, you get to record your screen or just send me an audio messages or type something, but ask about your ads, and I'll be able to give you recommendations right there. And then we'll set up the ads, and then I'll show you how I check up on ads and all the moves that I would make. I'll walk you through those and teach you how to make those same moves so that you can successfully manage your own ads with confidence. Head to the link that you can see right on the screen to book your spot for Facebook ads one-on-one coaching with me. All right, back to the video.
And the reason I didn't have to fight it financially is because I had the money machine. I had built it because of what happened with Jeremy years and years ago. And I didn't realize the importance of it until this moment, because it allowed me to sit back and say, we're shutting everything down. I'm no longer working. I'm no longer in business. I'm putting it on hiatus. And 100% of my efforts was to fighting, healing, and succeeding in that process. And and what I'm talking about isn't a savings account. I'm not talking about draining things, selling things, and being able to live for a period of time. I am talking about a machine that prints money for you, that basically it's generating income that allows us to live. That's what happened, is that we're generating income, allowing us to live. And then when I came through it, the machine was actually even bigger than it was when we started, even though it was generating the income, and I wasn't even working. And now that gave me the opportunity to when I decide to get back in the game, to just jump back in the game. And that's what the money machine is.
This is the episode that everyone needs to hear because life, if anything, is consistently unpredictable. And the fact that that diagnosis happened to you and you already had the money machine built, I mean, just hearing that makes me shudder. Like, because most of us do not have a money machine that's going to take us from month to month. When I say when life happens, because life does
It
happen.
will happen.
It will. It's not if, it's when. If not to us, to somebody we love, but unfortunately along this path of life, like we all are going toward the same destination, from dust to dust, if you would. So Mel, right now, the listener, they're awake. They're like, "Oh my gosh." For the listener who is making great money in their business and doesn't have this money machine built up, or even a listener like myself who is most of us are working at home right now, and we grapple daily with the, when you talked about your son, it hit me too, because my son, I tell him I'm going to work, and it's a lot different than like my dad told me he's going to work and he disappeared, but every time I go to work, my son knows exactly where I am and I'm up here, which means if I miss a meal, if I work on the weekend, he can see where I'm at. And so I'm too trying to strike a much better balance with my work and make sure that my business is providing so that I can be with my family more, but then also build up the money machine, if you will. So, first step, what does somebody do, like starting now, if they don't feel they have their money machine even started? What is a practical first step to get?
And it's going to sound odd, but you'll understand where it's coming from. Is that I think the first is to be intentional. When this whole thing happened with Jeremy, they they all said, "Hey, you need work life balance, work life balance." We don't need work life balance. It actually is a myth. It doesn't exist. Okay, what we need is harmony. Harmony comes from living intentionally. Harmony is sitting back and saying, I'm actually dictating every day, every moment of my life. And that it is not by happenstance, but by deliberate action. So the challenge is that too often we aren't doing that. We are being told what to do. We are allowing our clients to tell us what to do. We're not putting boundaries in. We're not doing that. And all of a sudden, even though we may have the wealth, we have the bank account, we have all of that, we're we're living bankrupt lives. So it's not about the money if it doesn't bring life along with it. And so I want to be really clear about being really intentional about what that might look like. Now, one of the things that I did when we talk about intentional, and because you mentioned your son, with my son, we created a calendar. And on that calendar, there was red zones. And those red zones were his in advance. So he always knew when dad was home. And he also knew any other color on that calendar, he could turn red at his option. And this may sound really cool and everything with that relationship. Now he's 34, two grandkids and everything, and is doing really, really well. But it's the same thing with your money. The problem. So what I did is in advance, I said, "Here's what we're going to do," so he could plan on it, he could depend on it, and it was intentional. What about our money? How many of you are sitting back and saying in advance, this is what each dollar is going to go for? Because what ends up happening, most of us are running in a situation where the money comes in and then we decide what to do with it. The problem is then we are subject to temptation. We're subject to emotions. We're subject to all kinds of things, which lead to guilt and shame and other things around money that will impact us. And then all of a sudden, we don't understand why we're not where we want to be because we weren't intentional. And so, what I want us to do is to be very intentional about every single dollar that comes in before it comes in and saying, I know that this is where it's going to go. Doesn't have to be complicated. But if I know that I'm going to have a $10,000 month, how much of that's going to the mortgage? How much of that's going to food? How much is going to travel? How much is going to our future? And if we haven't dictated that or said that in advance, it is susceptible to loss. It's to emotional decisions. When our emotions go up with our money, our intellect goes down. Okay, we make bad decisions when they're emotional decisions when it comes to money. And so I want to take all the emotion out of it and say, here's the first thing. So that's the first thing, is saying I'm willing to be intentional. The second, you can't win the wealth game on the sidelines or in the stands. You have to be on the field. That means you got to get in the game. And here's what that means. If you're not investing now, you have to start investing. It doesn't matter what's going on in the market. It doesn't matter what kind of economy we're in. It doesn't matter, because if you're sitting on the sidelines, you're going to lose. You can look at, someone can put away $5,000 a year, $5,000 a year from age 25 to 65. The person that invested in an S&P 500 fund at 8% will end up with $1.5 million. The person that is scared and sitting on the sidelines puts in a 2% savings account. Now, mind you, both people invested $200,000 over their lifetime. That's it. One ends up with $1.5 million. The person that didn't get in the game ends up with 300,000. Huge difference.
Huge difference. You know, the listener and me, we're not afraid to get a little tactical. I got a question. Can you speak? So I'm about to turn 43. Can you speak to me or somebody a little younger than me? Maybe somebody who's between 37 and 43. And let's just say less than $100,000 in the stock market, but still the vision is strong to quote unquote either retire early or become work optional, as in the money machine is fully alive and well and able to replace like most of the income should something happen, or should we need to just focus on our kids for a moment in time or a period? What do we do to catch up, so to speak?
Couple things. So I in the book, I talk through in detail something called the wealth priority ladder, which is the way you build and say, what does every dollar do? So the first thing is this. I want people to have some liquidity, in other words, cash on the side for peace of mind. So the first two thresholds are having some liquidity and making sure that you don't have destructive debt in your life. Destructive debt is the debt for consumables. It's the stuff that you're trying to afford today, but you can't afford it, so you put it on credit cards and you pay for it over time. We're not playing the payment game. Now, there is something called productive debt. I don't believe all debt's the devil. Productive debt is the debt that is going to generate more cash flow and or build your wealth. So, buying a rental property with a mortgage is productive debt. Okay? You'll be happy about this, but using credit cards to pay for Facebook ads, okay, getting an ROI on that, a multiple back, is productive debt.
Make sure the funnel is healthy first. Got to throw that in
Make
there.
your funnel healthy first to make sure you're getting it. And now, but using a credit card for a luxury vacation or a big screen TV that you can't afford and you want to make payments on, that's destructive debt, and it is consumable, and we don't do it. So I want to eliminate that, because that's the stuff that's going to erode our future. Okay. Once we know that we've got that in place, then it's really about us looking at investing. I want 20 to 25%, 20 to 25% of your income to be put aside for the future. At the very beginning, before you know how to invest or any of that stuff, just put it in a high yield savings account. Out of sight, out of mind. High yield savings account is fully insured, no fees, 100% liquid. You're going to get, right now, you're going to get 5 to 5.5% on it. So it's not horrible, but it is there as a temporary spot for us to then invest later. Now we can start looking at investing. Now this next step is invest. Don't make it complex. Now, some people say, should I invest in real estate? I have a very particular philosophy. I I truly believe you build safety first, growth second. So my philosophy is safety first, growth second. What's the safer investment? Real estate isn't it. And here's why real estate isn't it. Because I know that I'll get pushback from some folks on it. If I have $50,000 to invest, I might be able to buy one property. Okay. So I buy one property, but now I'm beholden to that property. If I have a bad tenant that doesn't pay and I have to evict, if I have a bad repair that I didn't plan for, if I have a vacancy that's extended, all of that's going to require me to carry the property and the cash flow for a period of time. And if all I had was 50,000 and I put it in there, I have no diversification. And at the beginning stages, it's not the right thing to do. I just don't think. So can we do real estate? Yes. Once we have critical mass of safety in the portfolio and the liquidity to carry it if the first deal goes bad.
Okay. Because of course the listener who is part of the real estate fam is saying, "But Mel, if I put 20% down, I'm essentially 5xing my money into this deal, and we can't do that in the stock market."
But I agree if everything works out. And so if that property goes vacant and you don't have the cash to sustain it, how do you make the mortgage? If the property, like I have a friend of mine who they bought a building and they wanted to redo the ceiling and the people came in and said, "Oh, there's asbestos here and you have a problem with the roof." $150,000 repair, and he had to put all the people out of the building because of the asbestos. So now you got $150,000 repair. You had to relocate tenants. You're not making any money and collecting it. How those are the kinds of that's the only reason I'm saying it. Let's say that you have a couple of properties that are operating, you got cash flow, and then you're good. But at the very beginning, it's a risky endeavor if you get the wrong property.
There we go. I'm in the same camp as you. I had to ask that question for somebody who just is, let's say, following the TikTok gurus because they make it seem so simple. I'm just going to go get a house, and then next year I can refi and pull the cash out and just get another house. And it's so peace of mind first. I like that you say that, and you say don't make it complicated. Invest it in the stock market. You want to break that down really simple, and then I know you got a chapter in the book that talks about it.
Yeah. But let's make it really easy. So what I want to do, let's say I had the same 50,000 instead of I'm not going to ask you to pick a stock. I'm not even going to ask you to pick 3 stocks. I'm going to ask you to pick 500 to 3,000 stocks is what I'm going to ask you to do. I want to make it as easy as possible, no friction. And the way to do it is you're going to go into low cost ETF index funds, either an S&P 500, a total stock market index, or a target date fund. That's it. Not a lot of friction, not a lot of decisions. Okay. At starting out, typically what I'll tell people is just do a target date fund, because then they'll take care of the portfolio makeup. But what you're doing is, if you look at a 2055 Vanguard fund, meaning that you told Vanguard that you want the money by 2055, they'll manage the portfolio to that point. If you look at that fund underneath it, they basically have bought four other index funds or ETFs of their own. Total stock market means that you've invested in 3,000 companies. Okay. A total international stock market, which meant that you've invested in multiple countries. A bond index, diversified, and potentially either a real estate index or an international bond index. That's it. That's all they're doing. And now all of a sudden, you took the 50,000 and spread the risk out over everything. If one company goes bad, it doesn't tank your whole future. The idea is to get critical mass here first before we start going into something that puts more exposure in. And the things that we know about the stock market is, one, it's never, ever gone to zero. And if it does, we got bigger problems. Second, it has always recovered. And third, if you look at the data, all we're talking about investing is long term. I mean, 7 years and beyond. Because here's why: there was a study done. If you invest in the S&P 500 index, 1 year, and I don't know this data point, but 1 year, if you look at it for 1 year, 69, 67% of the time you're up. Push that to 10 years, 94%. So, so why am I taking on the risk? Yeah. Is it possible that I get a deal or a crypto or something and I hit it out of the park and I make $1 million? It's possible. It's also possible you lose everything.
Hand raised right here. Definitely have lost over $20,000 in crypto because I thought it was going to the moon and I put my money in it. You know what? That was a mistake.
Yeah. And so I just look at it and I go, and we can go hold down another rabbit hole on the crypto side, but the bottom line is this is your financial future. This is your family's generational wealth. This is the legacy that you're creating. Why are we taking risks with it? Let's do something that has a high probability of success. Let's do things that have been proven over time, and let's keep it simple. Get in the game, stay in the game long term, and allow it to build.
I 100% agree. The third question I want to ask you, I'll ask in a moment, but I don't think I actually said to the listener, this book, your book, Building Your Money Machine, it's coming out in a couple of days, less than 3 days, right? Because we're Friday, or we're not recording on a Friday, but this episode is airing on a Friday, and it's coming out in just a few days. So somebody can get it pre-order today, right?
Yeah, they can pre-order it today. It'll ship out on June 11th, Tuesday.
Awesome. Awesome.
And when they do that, I'm going to give them a couple of wealth resources, gifts for doing that to help accelerate their path and train them through things.
I'm talking to the listener now. It's please get this book because your financial future matters. But think about how you serve people with your gift and passion with your business. Wouldn't you want even more to make sure that you're serving your family by setting up this money machine correctly? And like, I pray nothing happens to you and you don't need the money machine until you retire. Great. But wouldn't it be even better to know that that's something that you can inherit to your kids? Or that's something that for me, like, for example, I help my mom out financially. And to have something like this in place to where if it doesn't need to take care of you, it can take care of your close loved ones. Like, so that's my push. That's my plug. Go down to the descriptions below, get the book. I mean, the beauty of books and why we read. And I know like you're a reader too, right? So I'm preaching to the choir, but the beauty of books is Mel learned how to do this over, what would you say, Mel, about 2 decades?
Uh, yeah, 2.5 decades.
So 2.5 decades of experience in learning how to build this money machine and going through it and having the machine provide for him. And you can go down to the description below and get a book that gives you 2 decades of experience. And you can learn all that experience and apply it right now. Please go do that. All right. So back to the next question, Mel. And this one, so let's say that you got your book because you're about to get it. You told me just before we hit record, you got the hard copy in your hand. Let's say that you got your book and you happen across a time travel machine because your next door neighbor was like straight out of Back to the Future. And so you're going back to yourself 20 years ago with this book in hand from the future. Maybe you disguise it because, however time travel works, you don't want to ruin the future by giving it to your past self. But what I mean by this is, what are you saying? What is the one piece of advice that you're giving to your 20-year ago business self as you hand them this book? And why would you give him that advice?
This may sound odd, but the first piece of advice is that the ultimate purchase that you need to make is your freedom. Because there's some things that I purchased for momentary pleasures that pushed my freedom away because I put myself in debt because I did some things that I probably shouldn't have done. And so if what's driving me is the ability to have what is a get to life instead of a have to life, a life built on choice versus demands, then I get to ask myself, does this purchase, does this action get me closer to that goal or move me further away? But in my younger days, I just assumed I had plenty of time. I just assumed that everything was going to be fine and I could do it later. And the one thing that you'll see is that the more time you have, the less money you need. The less time you have, the more money you need. And so I didn't get that. And I think at the beginning, if I got that and said, hey, kid, get in the game, stay in the game, be deliberate with what you do, be intentional with what you do, and it will work out. It doesn't feel like it at the beginning because you're in something I call the wealth flat line. It doesn't feel like it. But what happens is that your money will work harder for you than you did for it, and you will separate your efforts from your earnings. And now you can create an income stream over time. It's not the norm, but if you want to live a positively abnormal life, then you can't do the norm.
The more time you have, the less money you need. The less time you have, the more money you need. None of us knows what tomorrow holds. And I just want to speak to the listener quick. Also, you may not have heard of Mel. He's been on this podcast before. And I just want to stress here, because when somebody's talking about finances, who is he from someone else? But Mel is a good friend of Rick Mulready, who is the former host of this podcast. And they go back quite a ways. So I just wanted to make that clear. Like, Mel's not somebody who just showed up in my email with a book, and because I like personal finance, I let him on the podcast. I'm quite careful who I let on the podcast, and you can trust Mel.